2,000 years, Jews and Christians have been divided. But now, God is calling for the healing of past hurts and the comforting of His people. Discover how God is prophetically uniting Jews and Christians across the world today on The Crossover. And now, here is your host, Mitch Jerome.
Welcome to The Crossover. And today we have a very special guest, Bill Koenig. He's been on our show before. Bill is a White House correspondent, one of the few Christian correspondents in the seat of the White House, author of a book, Eye to Eye, which has just been revised and revamped and updated. And Bill, welcome back to The Crossover.
Thank you, Mitch.
A name came for me today when I heard you speak I would have called you a spiritual meteorologist, a spiritual meteorologist. I hope that's acceptable for you.
That's fine.
Bill, you have, let's just put it this way, what Bill's going to share with us is a lot of political events that take place seem to have a dramatic effect on weather patterns and economic situations. There's a cause and effect. And it always has to deal with Israel, is what Bill is going to share. So I guess, Bill, you don't seem to be a person that would be big on coincidence.
Well,
is there versus divine intervention?
Exactly. I think that what I've seen and what I've written about in Eye to Eye is there's a cause and effect. The United States presidents apply pressure on Israel to divide their covenant land that would put them into indefensible borders. There are immediate consequences in America, and I've documented those in this book. I mean, we've had over 58 major catastrophic events happen the same day or within 24 hours of President Bush, Clinton, and Bush putting pressure on Israel to divide their covenant land. And it happens like this over and over and over again.
Now, before you even jump into any examples, and we're going to let you do that, just how did you get that title, first of all, Eye to Eye?
Well, my wife prayed about it, and we just didn't really come up with a title. We were about a week away from printing, going to press, and she was talking to the Lord about it and prayed and prayed and prayed, and He had her look at Isaiah 52:8, and it states when current events see eye to eye with prophecy. And it was just such a perfect fit because we are living within the times where current events are mapping and directly attributable to the prophecy written in the Bible. So that's where it came from.
Okay. And the prophecy, you really have to speak of Israel if we're speaking of prophecy in modern times.
Yes, and also if you look at Revelation 19:10, it talks about Jesus Christ, His prophecy. His life is about prophecy. And you look at scriptures throughout the Bible, they're about Jesus Christ, and they are, Jesus Christ is a prophetic fulfillment of the scriptures. So it's all interconnected, and we're, as Christians, looking for Jesus Christ's return to the Mount of Olives in Jerusalem. So my pastor used to always say, if you want to know where we stand biblically, watch what's happening with the city of Jerusalem. And we're living in a very exciting time because much is happening in Jerusalem as well as the nation of Israel.
Don't go away. We have another special segment. We'll be right back.
For nearly 2,000 years, Jews and Christians have been divided. But now, God is calling for the healing of past hurts and the comforting of His people. Discover how God is prophetically uniting Jews and Christians across the world today on The Crossover. The Crossover exists to communicate to the Jewish community that there is a growing group of Christians who love them unconditionally. The focus of the Crossover program is to promote a greater understanding of the differences and similarities between Jewish and Christian customs, history, and theology, while encouraging a closer walk with the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. As a second-generation Holocaust survivor, Rosalie's Jewish heritage includes parents who were protected from the Nazis by Christians. Yet for more than a decade, Mitch and Rosalie searched for meaning in life in the New Age movement. But after returning to their Judeo-Christian roots, they discovered God's purpose for their lives: to rebuild bridges between Christians and Jews. Now through TV, radio, the internet, speaking engagements, the healing room, and print and video resources, they are reuniting Jews and Christians in fulfillment of biblical prophecy. Join Mitch and Rosalie as they tackle tough topics and welcome dynamic guests on The Crossover. The Promised Land.
And I also tried to make it very clear to the Christians all over the world that they are threatened to the same extent as the Jews and Israel are threatened. And I also say basically that Jews and Christians are waiting for the Messiah, who is a Jew from Israel who speaks Hebrew. And that Messiah is going to come to Jerusalem. And so Christians share this faith with the Jews.
The Hebraic roots of Christianity.
And we began looking at Jesus through Jewish spectacles and not our Texas spectacles or American spectacles or even Western culture spectacles. He's so much more glorious. He's so much more grand. It does not in any way detract from the fact that he's the Son of God, the risen Savior, but he's also a man.
Judaism 101.
Many times people ask, what is a Jew? Is it a race? Is it a people? Is it a culture?
Jewish-Christian relations. Bible, fact or fiction? For more information on The Crossover and The Crossover Project, contact Rosalie Jerome or log on to our website.
Welcome back. Here's our main guest, which is Bill Koenig, White House correspondent, who's joining us today on The Crossover. So Bill, if the politicians in Washington, which have read your book, but if they actually abide by the scenarios that you have portrayed and glean the wisdom from what this book is stating, what would be different?
The key is, as in Genesis 15:18, talks about God gave Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob and their descendants the land of Israel, defined boundaries from the Euphrates River through parts of Iraq, Lebanon, Jordan, Israel, and Egypt. This is the covenant land of Israel. That land was God's land. It's a gift to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and he still determines how those boundaries are to be divided. So we, the United States, should stand with Israel, continue to stand with Israel. Israel has the rights to live in this land. It's less than 1% of the entire Middle East. And the best position right now, Mitch, is that when we talk peace in Israel, in the Middle East, we have Israel's so-called peace partners speaking peace in English, but at the Israel Arabic. So I also think if Israel's forced into these indefensible borders, it will have a lot to do with their survival as a nation. So consequently, our politicians, our elected officials should stand and say that the land of Israel is Israel's, and it's not to be divided for promises of peace and security.
So looking to Israel for peace, that was the name of the topic today.
Yes, Israel, the key to world peace. And that's what's interesting right now is most of the major leaders of the world say that if we can work out the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, that will bring peace to the world. It will also bring peace to the Middle East. It will also eliminate a lot of the sectarian problems in Lebanon, Iraq, amongst the Palestinians and others. It's amazing, isn't it, right now, this tiny little country the size of New Jersey that is less than 1% of the entire Middle East, that all these nations throughout the world are looking to Israel as if it's a key to world peace. Tony Blair of Britain says that Israel-Palestinian conflict is the #1 geopolitical problem in the world. That's amazing. But then biblically, Mitch, this is as written. It's supposed to be like this till Yeshua returns or Jesus returns to Jerusalem.
So where should we be looking then?
Well, I think the key in the Bible, there's key nations, key final day players: Russia, China, Iran, Iraq, Syria, Egypt, and obviously Israel. We're watching Russia and Iran become closer and closer together. We're watching Turkey and Russia redeveloping their relationships. We're seeing Russia become more involved in the Middle East. These are all the final day players, and they're all taking a position. No one knows the day or the hour of the final days, but we do think biblically that we're living in the most significant times in Bible prophecy history.
So then, give us an example here, Bill. You spoke of one today I would like for you to broach a little bit quickly on, is pre-9/11. What was the scenario with Saudi Arabia, President Bush together, and going to the UN? And use this example to show geographically what happened weather-wise, etc. Just tie it all in so our viewers can see. You go against Israel, and if it's not the mandate of God, there is going to be a effect, and it's not going to be pretty.
There's consequences, and when you're dealing with the land of Israel, you're dealing with the God of Israel and the God of the our world. He's our Christian God as well. So when you're dealing with the land of Israel, you're dealing. I mean, this is a direct involvement with the land of Israel. That's God's gift to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob and their descendants. It has consequences. I mean, that's what our book is: eye to eye, facing the consequences of dividing Israel. 17 days prior to 9/11, President Bush, Crown Prince Abdullah of Saudi Arabia, Prince Bandar, the Saudi ambassador to the U.S., and Colin Powell were working with President Bush on what was going to be the most comprehensive address ever given by an American president to the UN General Assembly on September 24th, 2001. Prince Bandar, in a Washington Post article, and I've written it in this book, that specifically 9/10 he was going to take. He said this on 9/10 that he was going to take 9/11 off. They just finished basically an around-the-clock negotiations on what was going to be the most comprehensive address ever given. It was going to ask for a Palestinian state. He was going to call on the future status of Jerusalem to be negotiated. And President Bush was going to call for all the parties to fulfill the previous UN resolutions having to do with this land in Israel.
So a Palestinian state would have been in the land?
It would have been part of it, yeah. Palestinian state would have been on God's covenant land. Okay. His father, or Bill Clinton, would never, ever dare gone there. They would never even think about that for a second. They would never utter that. But President Bush had this idea of Palestine and Israel living side by side in peace and security, which is now the backbone of the Middle East peace process.
But why was the pressure coming from Saudi Arabia?
Saudi Arabia felt that President Bush was siding with Israel. He'd seen President Bush publicly come against Arafat for not doing more to stop the terrorism in Israel. Abdullah read this as if President Bush was siding with Israel, got the message back to the White House. He wasn't happy about that. The White House was concerned because of Saudi oil and Saudi influence in the Middle East, and they went ahead and got the message to the White House. President Bush was concerned. They talked, well, we need to try to work this problem out, and they felt, well, the best thing to do is come up with a comprehensive address that President Bush or Colin Powell would give to the UN. The interesting thing is 9/11, the day Prince Bandar was going to take off, was the worst possible day ever, in his words, for Islam, and the worst possible day ever for the Saudi Arabians. And it's been the beginning of terror, and we've been paying the price ever since. So it was a very significant day that's affected everybody in our country and people throughout the world.
And why did that speech never come about afterwards anyway?
Well, it did eventually come out. His next address, he finally did get it out, June 24th, 2002. He gave the Bush plan at the White House after two other previous interruptions because of major suicide bombings in Jerusalem on June 18th and 19th. He finally gave it on the 24th. He gave the plan on the content that I mentioned. Eventually that summer it was merged into the Quartet Roadmap, which is the United States, the EU, the UN, and Russia. That Quartet Roadmap was officially given to Israel and the Palestinians on April 30th, 2003.
We have another segment for you that's special, so don't go away.
We know why Jews are supposed to go live in Israel and Jerusalem, but tell me, why would it be important for a Christian?
Okay, the name Yerushalayim means the city of the peace of God. And all names are fulfilled in the Bible eventually. Like Netanyahu, a gift from God, I mean, all these things. So this is the only city in the world with God's name in it, with a promise that His peace will be upon the city. And so therefore, to concretize our faith, we should be there and see where these various things have happened. Many of them are authentic, some are traditional, some are not authentic. But even that whole presence of God is shining on that country. You can feel it when you land in the airport. It's the way it is. So we live I would say, in a very sort of abstract idea of God, faith in God. When you get to Israel, where all these things, the stones, they're discovering new things, all sorts of archaeological discoveries are going on. and they authenticate the Bible. We found, David's house of cedar, 100 feet long and 50 feet wide, and I was just there in the course that I'm taking. So everything is.
That's a recent discovery?
Yes, fairly recent.
What would you like to say to a Christian who's watching this program today, who forget about even just living in Jerusalem, just visiting? What did it do for you personally, bottom line, and what do you want to say to them?
It concretized our faith when we first went. It also meant that it opened up the whole possibility of us understanding the Jewish way of life, which has been a tremendous blessing to us. We have learned so much there, and you can learn even just in a short time, whether it's a 1-week tour or 10-week or 10-day tour or whatever. Something happens to you when you're there. You're transformed, and many people say they feel like they're coming home. I know I did, and I'm not Jewish.
I get chills when you say that.
It's powerful, and it's not uncommon for people to sense this, because we have the common prophets, the common forefathers, everything is. But what has happened is that the rocket got started, was slightly off 2,000 years ago, and now 2,000 years later, it's really off.
Way off.
And so we have to now go back to say, what happened to this 5-degree off? When the apostles died, then you were left with Greek philosophers and Latin philosophers.
Right.
And that's when the rocket started to go off, and that's the way it is.
Now, with all of this fear of getting hurt and going to Israel, what do you want to say to those Christians who want to take a trip?
It's safer than Detroit.
Welcome back to The Crossover.
Give us another example, one of the hurricanes. It was such a bad year, whatever that was, 2005?
Well, I tell you what, Mitch, before we get into this,
Okay.
since we just finished the roadmap, on April 30, 2003, the roadmap was delivered by the United States to the Israelis and Palestinians. In the next 11 days, the United States was hit with 412 tornadoes. It was the largest tornado outbreak in the history of the United States. It was also very interesting because this hit the heartland of America, which is the Midwest. The heartland of Israel was being negotiated, Judea and Samaria. If you look at a map, Judea and Samaria, which everybody's called on the political scene the West Bank, because it's the West Bank of the Jordan River, this is the heartland of Israel, Judea and Samaria. And that's the roadmap talk about Israel. Giving that up, in the next 11, 12 days, the United States was hit with unprecedented tornadoes as the United States continued to be negotiating in Israel and meeting with Israelis and Palestinians. The other one was very interesting.
So let me make sure our audience gets this. Going against Israel, dividing the land, here was the consequence on American soil because it was coming through our government pressuring Israel to go this direction.
The United States is a great friend of Israel,
Yes.
has been for a long time. That's why we have the role today as being the point man in the peace process. But even though President George W. Bush means well, it would like to see peace in the Middle East and like to see Israel living in peaceful environment, peace and security with peaceful boundaries and safe boundaries. The land of Israel is not to be divided. And our Lord has said that throughout the scriptures, that this is an everlasting covenant that he had with Abraham's descendants, and it's not to be divided regardless of whether you have good intent or not. That's the consequences we write about in Eye to Eye.
And you shared something interesting today. 2006 was supposed to be another horrendous year for hurricanes. I mean, I remember them broadcasting that. We're in the area where we get hit with that.
Yeah.
And it was nothing. It
That's
was
right.
so opposite. And share what happened on the political scene.
Well, 2004, record hurricanes. 2005, we had Katrina, Rita, Wilma, all directly connected to Israel. The 4 major hurricanes of 2004 all had a direct connection to Israel. The size, significance. I mean, these are 7 of the most costly hurricanes in U.S. history, all had a connection in 2004 and 2005 to pressure being applied on Israel to divide their land. President Bush in 2006 stood with Israel. He did not interfere with their war with Hezbollah. He gave Israel the smart bombs and other weapons, bunker-busting bombs, to help them in this war with the terrorist organization Hezbollah. And he stood with Israel throughout the year. And we were supposed to have another enormous tropical storm and hurricane season, and for all practical purposes, it didn't happen. The highest winds all throughout 2006 was 45 miles per hour in the state of Florida. That was it. We had $200 billion worth of property damage in 2005. In 2006, it was $100 million.
And this is after if I heard you right, the president did read your book, and many in his cabinet before 2006.
You know, Mitch, we've been writing him letters since 2001, and there were a couple of members of his cabinet thanked me for providing the book to him. And we believe that it might have had an influence. We're not going to take direct credit for that, but we do believe that it gives them a biblical perspective on the significance of the land, and that they did reevaluate their position.
So to wrap up here, Bill, and to speak to our camera, if this was, you were before the Senate right now in a full House, and they wanted help on Israel because man is going nowhere with this quartet, and the economy is falling apart, and devastation with weather situations beyond comprehension, they go, Bill, give us some insight. What would it be?
I would say that the United States has been a friend of Israel for a long time. The United States has been a protector of Israel in many ways. We have been blessed by the relationship, and Israel's been blessed by the relationship. And I would say right now that Israel's land, which is a small amount of land, less than 1% of the entire Middle East, that the United States should reevaluate the position as the sponsor of dividing the land of Israel. I think the United States should not participate in a peace process that calls on Israel to give up land to neighbors that speak peace in English and the death to Israel in Arabic. That is very important for us to understand. And also, I think the United States should not force Israel to give up land that would put them in indefensible borders. That's the proper position.
Well, here's a book, Eye to Eye, and there's so much more information in here. If you want to hear about the Madrid conference, the effects that had, Kenny Bunkport, the different Katrina, Rita, Charlie. I mean, Bill has done his homework, and this book has so much more information than we can get to in these few minutes that we had. Bill, enjoyed it as always. Hope to see you again, and we're happy that you're one of the few believers that are in the White House, right down the road there from our president, right down the aisle.
Thank you, Mitch. Great to be with you.
Mitch and Rosalie as they reach an ever-growing worldwide audience through the crossover. We invite you to become a crossover partner right now by calling the number on your screen. For your monthly gift of $30 or more, you will receive the Crossover Partnership Pack, which includes a DVD of today's program, a personal greeting and prayer message from Mitch and Rosalie, more information about the Crossover Project. As you continue to support the Crossover each month, you will receive a new Crossover DVD, a monthly ministry report, and your name will be added to the Healing Room. Call now or log on to our website and join the growing family of Crossover Partners. And be sure to join us again next week as Mitch and Rosalie tackle timely topics and welcome dynamic guests on The Crossover.
Lord God of Abraham, Isaac and Israel,